Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Portland Connections. This is Sherry Ferguson with the Portland Chamber of Commerce, and we are wanting to get some people on. As people come in, if you are watching live, make sure that you comment for a chance to win 2 meals from Senor Fajitas. So make sure you get your comments in because you can go in every day for those drawing on Friday. I don't know if I mentioned last week, the winner was Jolie Collins. So congratulations to her. She has been notified and will be picking up her meals this week. So glad to have with us Dr. Dale Phillips with the Sumner County Schools. Welcome, Dr. Phillips.
Good to see you, Sherry. Thank you for having me on.
Good to see you as well. I know everything is changed over the last few months. And let me just start by saying you guys have done a great job in keeping up with all the changes, keeping those students engaged, and trying to get through this terrible time that you've had to navigate a pandemic for the first time ever.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you saying that. You know, our teachers, we really had to change so much about, just how we operate. And we're not unlike probably every business that you deal with.
Right.
Everyone had to change how they operate. And so we were in that same boat. And, our teachers did a phenomenal job across the school district. We have remarkable people. Our campus leaders did a remarkable job. Our central office team, minus me, they all did a great job. I just kind of hung around mostly, but all those folks did a tremendous job to try to put us in the best position possible to support parents and students. Parents had to battle the pandemic and their issues with their workplace and working and not working and from home, and then also deal with trying to support their child learning from home and how to do that, and all of a sudden become a teacher. So just juggling a lot of hats, and they did a great job too. So I think everyone is just I'm proud of how everyone has reacted, and really did a great job for the last since March 20th or so.
Well, and again, to echo that, I know that there are a lot of parents out there that if they did not know before, they do know now. They do not want to homeschool.
Yeah, we had some folks ask us around the state, and I had a conversation about that yesterday regionally, and talking about what we felt like with homeschool. And I said, I think probably parents for the most part will be more appreciative of the school day and maybe teachers and that kind of thing after this. But there may be some that choose that, but I think for the most part, everyone's going to be really excited to go back to school in August. I know all of my group will be glad to see folks back on campus.
I think we're ready for some social interaction rather than just Zoom calls. I know I saw a video that talked about a teacher doing her Zoom calls with her elementary class, and she's asking questions, and then they're wanting to show them their turtle, or they're wanting to show them something that's going on. So I get it. I can just picture all of the new experiences that the students have had. So
some interesting Zoom calls have occurred, no doubt.
Yes, and also with the workplace, I'll tell you, they have we've had some very interesting ones as well. So it's not only students and children; it's adults can be kind of interesting as well. So
I'm glad to hear that. It's not just us.
That's right. So, well, let's go start out, and we'll just talk a little bit about kindergarten registration. I know that was an issue that people were worried about because they all want to go in and see the school. So tell us a little bit about how that's going to work this year.
So we know parents, and I think we put that out pretty early on with some guidance so parents would know, hey, we haven't forgotten about it, but we just need to kind of get a little space and distance between us and the pandemic to see kind of what safety protocols we need to put in place, if any, before we have that happen. So I think we have it scheduled for the end of June, which I think is consistent with the week we have graduation scheduled for that weekend. So we felt like that was about as late as parents would want to probably do that and feel good about start of school a month later. And so principals will be reaching out to folks, and we've already, I think, published those dates across the county, be consistent for every school. And we'll have an online component, I think, for parents to submit things. We did online registration last year where parents could submit items and kind of cut the wait time down when you go through the week school starts, the week before school starts on high school, middle school campuses. But we're going to try to do that for kindergarten this year. So they'll be getting some guidance about that from the district and from their individual school where they're going to register. And then we'll have the in-person too. And so we're planning to do that because we know parents, especially kindergarten and especially, and also elementary parents, they want to be able to have that time in the school and with the principal and with some of the teachers prior to actually school starting in August. So we'll try to the best of our ability to make sure that they have an opportunity to do that.
Well, with that being said, we also want to remind everybody for kindergartner and seventh graders, we need to make sure we get our immunizations. So there'll be some of those left to do. So health department or your primary care physician.
We talked a little, Sherry, that's a great thing to remind everyone about. We talked about that yesterday as well. And the immunization requirements are still going to be in place. And I know we've had limited or probably that's been an issue that they could not go to their normal physician the last, 8-9 weeks and take care of that. So I know physicians or offices around the county are trying to figure out how do we handle the volume that'll come to us to take care of that, and also the health department. But we want to make sure parents realize that prior to school starting, even though it may be a little difficult with scheduling and those kind of things with the physicians, we need to make sure that we get that immunizations taken care of so we don't have an issue when school starts. Thank you.
One great thing that you've been able to do is the grab and go meals for the students. It has, how many have you served, or your typical serving, do you know?
I think last week we had looked at maybe 400,000 or so, something like that. It's a crazy number. It's all good. We've got 12 sites across the county, and we're going to run those through the end of June, which I think that's maybe the 26th or something like that.
26th, yes.
26th, yeah, June. So we're going to run them through June at all 12 sites, which is it's a really good thing. It's the first time we've been able to obviously to do that in the summer, but we're seeing really good response. We've had some weeks where more meals are picked up than others, but a lot of that just depended, I think, really depended on the timing of that week. There were other things that were happening or not happening, and some parents just maybe couldn't make it by to pick them up. But we've had a really good response from our communities to come by and get those meals, and we're delighted about that because we know they're going for the intended use and intended purpose, and it helps students and families, and proud we had such a good response from across the county.
And that was funded by the state, is that correct?
Well, it's a little more funded federally. The National School Lunch Program, obviously, we deal with that every school day, and it's a reimbursement for meals served if you qualify. If you don't qualify, then the district doesn't get any reimbursement for those meals. And basically what happened is those thresholds were pretty much eliminated. So we could count meals that we were giving out to anyone that asked for them. We could count those meals and get reimbursed. And so it's a little bit of just kind of a hold harmless for local districts. From a financial standpoint, they want you to give out as many meals as you possibly can to feed as many kids as you can, regardless of where they met an economic threshold or not. So basically, they just relaxed that rule, and it gave everybody an opportunity to get meals, so we didn't have to worry about that. So that was a good call, a good thing from the feds, and it took a little bit of time to work through that the first week or so, and it was kind of really confusing, but they took feedback and we pushed that up through the state, and our delegation worked to make sure that it was straightened up there, and we were able the following weeks to provide meals for every child. That's a good thing.
Well, and I know it's been great. I don't have students at home anymore, but I do know my grocery bill has increased since my husband's been sitting at home working all the time. So he has been eating more at home. So I know that people with kids at home, their grocery bill has phenomenally increased. So I'm sure that this has been a great help to all families that have needed that. So we do appreciate y'all working through those bugs. I know you had bugs trying to get it worked out, as we do with any new program, trying to come up with it in a week to be able to push out all of the meals and get all of that. So again, kudos to you guys. Every business, and whether it's school is a business. I mean, you are running a business. We have been through so many new things that we'll probably never get to use these skills that we have learned all over again. Hopefully we won't, but it is, you guys have done a great job with all of that. So next topic, let's go on and talk about the summer camps or the daycares that are running out of the schools that families have been so lucky to be able to have over the years, and because they depend on that. And then you can run into the athletics as well. So go ahead and tell us how that's working.
We went ahead and kind of targeted June 1st back several weeks ago, being kind of a restart date for us. We felt like that was it was a Monday, felt like it was just a good natural date to kind of get things going. We felt like at that point we really didn't have exact direction from the state. We knew that probably things would be reopening by then. So we went ahead and said, hey, we're going to start having where we have daycare programs on our school campuses. We're going to go ahead and get ready for a restart to those on June 1st. And a little bit of that, Sherry, was just simply if things reopen and people can't work remotely, they're having to go to work to the office, then that resource that they're used to as a daycare at their school, those types of things, was going to be a huge issue for parents. And so we just felt like that was probably a good time to go ahead and get back open. So they'll open back up June 1st. The Y uses some of our campuses, and even though they communicate kind of their plan, but I think they're going to go back like we are June 1st. There'll be some camps that typically happen in early June that may have been postponed that are on school campuses, especially elementary and middle school. Some may have been canceled altogether. We have so many of those, Sherry, across the entire county, especially when you lump in athletic camps. What we tried to do was just to let principals and sponsors and coaches make those decisions on their own campus and push that information out. But we did tell them you need to push it off into June as far as you can and still make it happen. So, and there again, we just felt like the deeper we could get into June, probably the less restriction that we would have to have, and a better chance to make those things happen where, it was enjoyable for everyone and not so many restrictions that it just kind of wasn't worth doing. So that's kind of the camp end and daycare. Athletics, very similar. Coaches, of course, coaches chomping at the bit. We had such an unusual, just kind of end to our athletic seasons this year. Basketball, baseball, of course, forward, all the spring sports that, I really felt so bad for those athletes that maybe they were only a baseball player or only a spring sport athlete. And, they missed that whole season, and there's really nothing anybody can do about that. I mean, it's just a fact. It's like a million other things. It's just a fact of what we had to do. But coaches, are chomping at the bit to get back in there and get their student athletes back in, to see them again, and then to start conditioning and try to put them in the best spot possible for fall sports. And reduce injuries and other things that may come from not being quite as conditioned as they would have been. So we did allow coaches to go ahead and start lining up for practices to occur or for conditioning and things that are acceptable to do in the summer based on TSSAA. back June 1st, that same Monday. And we just asked coaches, we put some restrictions around what they could do. We're not going to have locker rooms open. We will have gyms and athletic spaces open, weight rooms, those kind of things, what we typically use for conditioning. We have a cleaning protocol that we've gone through with athletic trainers and athletic directors on the high school campuses. Middle school will still be restricted a good bit because we really don't need to bring them in until later in July. But high schools, we tried to get them to stagger, not work in groups of greater than 10 to start out with. Mike Brown's our AD, and Mike and I have told them, once we get going and have about 2 weeks of the restriction, and what we've told you, if we feel like you can increase those groups to 20 or 25 or 30, then we will let you know that if we think that's safe to do at that point. But right now it'll be some restricted areas, and it'll also be a little bit of a change in how we structure groups. So we won't have a large group conditioning. We'll have smaller group conditioning. One coach with each 10 athletes, 2 ends of the gym floor, some in the weight room, some out on the field. So you'll see some things that we're modifying to try to make it safer, but also get those kiddos back in the swing of things. And part of what people don't realize, and I guess if you've been an athlete, you do, you miss those months of conditioning and weightlifting, and then you're expected to perform at the same level that you would have on the court in the field in August in the heat that we'll be playing football in and fall sports. It could cause bigger issues down the road if we don't get everybody ready to play. So we're just trying to ease back into it, be thoughtful. And I think our coaches and ADs know the plan, and they'll do a good job with it.
And I'm sure that the coaches were sending these kids some workouts to do at home. Now, whether they were all doing them at home, I'm not sure. But I remember those sports days. My kids, they love to practice just as much as they did the game. So I know that they're all ready to get back to doing the things that they love, as well as the coaches. So
we tried to tell them, Sherry, too, and I think you're right. We tried to tell, coaches, hey, stagger them coming in and out, so we don't have in our larger schools, we don't have, 80 football players showing up at one time.
Right.
And we told them, listen, we know they haven't seen, they've probably seen each other, but we haven't seen them.
Probably.
They've seen each other. But we said, look, when it's all over with and you're releasing everybody 10, 15 minutes apart, and you go out there and 5 groups are still standing in the parking lot talking, I mean, you have to make them move on, So we're going to try to do our part, but at the end of the day, we're dealing with teenagers that are social and they want to see each other,
We had to move them on from some parking lots here when they were trying to socialize, I think, in the beginning. So we get it and all. So, well, let's talk a little bit about budget. First of all, let's see, how has the COVID affected your budget currently? Because have you had expenses of things that you typically would not have had, and not being in school, have you been able to save some funds? What's kind of going on with all of that?
So most of our funding, when you look at our total budget, is consumed with, we're a labor-driven market business. So, 85 cents of every dollar that comes in goes back out in someone's paycheck and benefits. So for the most part, when you look at how we operate just as a business, if you pay people and you keep their benefits going, that's 85% of every dollar you receive and expend. So for the most part, we've obviously paid everyone through the shutdown and kept everyone's benefits. So it's really much like the pandemic didn't happen from the financial employee end of it. So for us, there wasn't a lot of impact, direct impact to how we were functioning in this quarter, in the last section of our budget, fiscal year budget that we're finishing up. More for the future versus where we're currently in now. So payroll and everything stayed the same and went out. And we asked our teachers, of course, we talked at the beginning, about making sure they stayed engaged with their students. And we had some accountability measures around that and contacts and how that happened. And so that side of it was pretty much status quo. Future budgets, the budget that we just passed at the board and will go to the county in June, we did have to re-look at revenue stream, especially from sales tax and property tax too. Property tax generates the lion's share minus state funds, but locally, property tax generates the biggest share of our funding for the schools and for the county. And even though that's been consistent over time for us, it's grown every year by 6% or so, which has been pretty healthy with Sumner County for the last 6 or 7 years. We went ahead and adjusted down what we felt like would be new property and things that would be rolling onto the tax roll. We also looked at collectability. And we have a really high collectability rate here in the county. And we look back at what happened in 09, 10, and 11 and tried to figure worst case scenario and then use that. And if it doesn't pan out to be that bad, great. We will be in better shape next June than we anticipated. Sales tax, of course, will probably take the biggest punch. For us in the county, even though that's not the largest revenue generator, it is still a substantial amount. And again, we look back at month over month, year over year from the Great Recession, and we tried to figure out, well, what do we think would be the worst case scenario compared to the previous year's tax receipts, and then take that worst case scenario and plug that in from the revenue side. So we feel like we've projected revenue at a very conservative rate, looking back historically at kind of what happened after 08, 09, 10 into 11, and then figure out how do we make sure that we can still operate, do some things that we need to do, hire teachers, buy curriculum for our ELA that we've been rolling out and planning to do, some other strategic things, and keep the financial boat sailing and healthy here until we can kind of get into the fall and spring of next year and see how bad it actually is.
Well, with your budget this year, so let's first talk. Do you have what's the status of new schools?
Well, we have the new campus going out at Liberty Creek, which is up off of just north of Long Hollow Pike. So they're doing dirt work every day that it doesn't rain there, site work, and it's coming along on schedule. And so feel good about that. They should start probably with an actual building footings and pad probably late summer. So that's on track for a fall.
When is fall of 22? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then, as far as other construction in the county, for us, that's pretty much it. We've kind of got that as the big thing that's going. That will be 2 schools that will open at the same time, elementary school, and then a middle school, high school combination that will eventually be just the high school. But we'll let the middle school population kind of grow enough into a point where they need their own building. And I think, I've told the county, I think that'll be, 5 years or so. And then I think that will probably happen. But of course, that's all dependent on housing. That's all dependent on growth. And, with the situation we're in now, even though housing has continued to be strong, even through the pandemic. And I read some reports this morning where, the expected decline in sales, new home sales in March and April was much less severe than they thought it was going to be. that they didn't see much of a dip, and so we'll see how that all shakes out. But right now we're moving forward with Liberty Creek and for opening 22.
So where are we? I know on your budget this year you had proposed school supplies for the students. So that's exciting. I know we work really hard to help the schools with students with school supplies because we know how hard it is on some of these families. So tell us what went into that planning and what you guys are looking at doing and how you come about with that that decision.
Yeah. So as we were looking at things for the future and we started looking at budget, we'd already met with all the principals, and that was pre-pandemic. And so we were down to kind of department head level and me here in this office. And, I just felt like it was probably one way that we could support parents and our students in a way that would help with not only the cost and the burden of the school supplies this year, but also not having all of the parents rush out to buy notebook paper and stuff 5 days before school starts. So we're trying to kind of look at it from both ends, and say, well, it's going to make it easier on parents. We have some parents that maybe they find themselves unemployed at the end of July. The current unemployment package is supposed to expire at the end of July. So maybe a lot of stress, continued stress and uncertain financial situations across the county. So we were just looking at a way that we could probably buy those things in bulk, provide them directly to the schools and to the classroom teachers, and then everyone would have an equal footing with supplies to start the year. And hopefully reduce some of the stress and pressure that comes along with that. And of course, it saves parents that have school-age children money, and that's a good thing too. So that's kind of how that came about. We did have that in the budget this year, and I was proud that we were able to do that for parents.
So, with that, that's for kindergarten through 8th grade, and the high school will still supply their supplies, and because they're a little unique to each department.
Yeah, and high schools, you get split up into CTE and you get split up into other lab-based sciences and some other things. And so depending on what your schedule actually is and what classes you're taking, and it gets to be a little bit more specific than we can just bulk buy things. I mean, obviously, it's cleaning supplies and things that maybe they've asked parents to help provide in the past. We'll do that, but obviously. But K-8 is really where we're kind of focused. And you guys, Sherry, I know you're a part of that every year. Do a tremendous job helping us gather up backpacks and notebook paper and pencils and all the things that we put in those backpacks. I think last year I asked Katie, I think you guys maybe we gave out 1,300 backpacks to kiddos last year before school started. And we're still going to have a need for some of those things, even though the school district's going to buy a bulk of the items, individual backpacks, and then some other things that we're going to need to make sure that we can support kiddos as they come back to school. But we'll obviously have a head start on Ticonderoga pencils and highlighters and erasers and all kind of stuff that we will buy.
Well, one thing we were wondering is, I'm assuming these students may need items for homework too, that they'll be, so there may be some needs, even just for your standard crayons and pencils and paper to put in those backpacks too, or will you guys be supplying those supplies to go home too?
Yeah, we're going to supply those. So if you take the list, we have it online, but if you take the list that parents typically are asked to provide, we're going to provide all of those things with the exception of a couple of items that we felt like parents probably would want their own child to have. Give an example, headphones. We felt like they would probably want their child to have their own headphones to use in the computer lab. Compass and a protractor, I think, for some grades, more in middle school. we felt like that was something they would want to own and keep. And then calculators, but we have, for the most part, we have calculators, classroom sets of calculators that we use in school. So sometimes that's not even necessary for parents to buy. So everything else on the list, crayons, highlighters, pencils, notebook paper, folders, all those kind of things that we have on that list every year for K-8, depending on what grade you're in. We're going to try to buy all of that stuff in bulk and have it available.
So what are you thinking? Are you going to have to do any type of new, I guess things will change, but what about your start times or cleaning? Are you going to have cleaning throughout the day? Are kids going to still swap classes? Have you had a chance to think through any of that?
Yeah, we've thought through a lot of it, and not really ready to say yet exactly how we some options that we want to put out there. But cleaning obviously will be a big one, and it already is inside the school. But how do we do that better, maybe more frequently during the day? Visitors to campus. And some of the events that we typically have where we have lots of parents and folks in, how are we going to do that if it's during the school day? Cafeteria in general, because you have a lot of kiddos in the cafeteria and kind of a tight space, whether we do that the same way or whether we change it up to have students eat in their classroom. And there are a lot of things that are out there people are talking about. And to be quite honest with you, Sherry, some things are doable and some things are not doable.
Right.
I mean, it just, take, for instance, recess. I told the board last week, look, if you think you're going to socially distance kids when you turn them loose on the playground, second graders, first graders, kindergartners, fourth graders, it make a difference. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not possible. You can't manage it. So, but you don't want to have school and not have recess. But could you do something else? So we're kind of in that world. I think we're the same place every other school system in America. We're trying to write all of those things down on the board and then talk them through, talk to principals, talk to teachers, and say, what would we do if we couldn't do this the same way? And, I think by middle July, we will have some things kind of in our tool chest here that if we get to a point where we feel like we need to implement some of those strategies, we'll do it.
Well, one of the questions that somebody has here is, will our kids have to wear a mask?
No.
And that is a great answer because I can visualize. My daughter's a nurse, and the first thing she said when she saw those guidelines where the students were she said, oh, I can see them stomping on them on the floor, picking them up, putting them back on. So again, besides the fact that how do you keep a kindergartner to keep a mask on? So,
and that's kind of one of those things that there's some things we can do and some things we can't do. Before long, we start managing the wearing of the mask or not wearing of the mask versus teaching
exactly
school. So and that's one of the things that along with 5,000 others that we've talked thoroughly through. Well, and to be honest with you, I don't even know what the recommendation 6 weeks from now will be for the general public, much less school.
This is true.
They change almost. It was daily, but now pretty much weekly with the CDC and other, medical experts, it changes. And I think as we reopen the world between now and the middle of July, there will be a lot of things that change. And so we're trying to sit down and think of all the things that may be a concern, what may be doable in a different way, but still look like school. And then what things do we think are just not possible? And then when we get to that point in July, we're going to have to make some decisions about here are some things that if we see an uptick, if we see an issue where we have a second wave, if we see other things that happen that cause us to have some concern, then these are the steps that we could implement to to try to do our part to hold that off.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure you guys have thought about it. My first thought is, as far as the cleaning, to help with the cleaning for your staff, because you can't have staff going around behind the kids all the time. I said, just between every class, each student has to clean their own desk and then wipe down something else. And I'm like, then the kids are doing the cleaning. You don't, you can actually have them, and you're teaching them. So maybe that's something you can work on too. So,
but Sherry, I think out of this, people talk about changed behaviors, and I don't know if we stand as close in the line at Kroger or Publix as we used to. I don't know that we don't all become, this includes children, become a little bit more aware of wiping down spaces or washing our hands more. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's going to be behaviors changed in every aspect of our world and our environment. So, I mean, maybe that's a good byproduct that we're all becoming more aware of. Okay, well, let's be a little socially distanced when we're standing in lines, or let's
wash our hands.
We wash our hands, or we wipe down our workspaces more than we used to. I don't know, but I think we'll all be in that boat together.
I think so, and I think our kids are learning a lot more about cleanliness and doing these things, and seeing how when you can shut down everything because we've got to clean things, then maybe that's, if I do this as I go along, I won't have to shut everything down as often. So maybe we're getting to them some. We've come a little lax in some things like that. So I think that again, a lot of the things that are coming out of this are good things. Technology, being able to do these interviews and talk to people without, this technology has been there for a long time. We've just not taken advantage of it. So I think that, again, we're coming up with a lot of ways to do things. And I think one of the questions is, I work in the cafeteria. How are the breakfast and lunches going to work? And I think you spoke to that. You said that may have to have some in the classroom. We're still working through those things. So
you have all types of issues just in that one thing. Some teachers and principals do not care for having breakfast in the classroom. Some do. Lunch we've never done before for the most part. So, we'll just have to work through all those things. And it may be, if that's something we have to do, that may be the new normal for a year.
Right. Well, it could be that you do half in the classroom and half in to be able to distance more. And it also probably depends on how crowded those lunchrooms are. Some schools are probably more crowded than others. So again, some of it will be based on each school, I'm sure.
No doubt.
Looks like somebody asked about what's being done to provide teachers with professional learning on best practices for virtual learning. You guys have really worked on that, because you didn't have a lot of options for virtual learning until this happened, and it's learning by fire. So you had to. So what have you guys done to be able to do the distant learning and the virtual learning in case?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that we probably have learned from this, a lot of things, but from an instructional standpoint, one, our teachers got up to speed pretty quickly with Zoom and having Zoom meetings with their kiddos and that kind of thing. So I think that was pretty good. The G Suite, the Google Suite of things, I think we had some teachers that had really good understanding of that from prior training, but we had a lot of teachers that hadn't had that experience. And so we already have some PD training planned to try to get everybody up to the same kind of the same standard, the same base of knowledge for that, which I think will be important if we have future issues where we have to have closures. Excuse me. One thing that we learned that making the content available online is a wonderful thing, and we can control the quantity of devices and the quality of devices, but we can't control whether they have accessibility from home, because internet connectivity is spotty everywhere in this county. And so that's something we can't fix on our own, but we can work with legislators, both state and federal legislators, to try to figure out how to do that. I think that's also really become important for retailers and other business sectors that have to have connectivity for their businesses to continue, where people are working from home, but they live in a rural part of the county and they don't have great internet accessibility from home. That kind of makes that hard. So we're in the same boat with everyone else in regard to that. And I think there will be a lot of legislation that gets pushed down that probably helps with that rural accessibility issue pretty soon. You know, one thing that we want to do in the future, Sherry, we're already looking to create inside our system some jobs very specific to content. And how to develop and push that content through Sumner Connect, which is our portal for students to get instruction. We're also looking at how to make that content scalable across the county, so it's not dependent on one teacher to teach just their class. Meaning, this fall we will try to capture every AP course that we have in the county, at least one of every one, and record that content delivery by that teacher on a campus in the county, within the county, every day of the school year. And then once we capture that content, we can make it scalable to kiddos that don't live in Hendersonville or don't live in Portland, or they can take it from anywhere. So we want to try to do that early with high school AP, and then probably in future years roll that down to K-8 and especially the upper grades. It's a little bit difficult to do in kindergarten and first, but as you get second and up, it will be a little easier. So we'll start rolling it backward once we get out of the AP class world in high school. But those are some of the things. I think you mentioned that a lot of the things that we have learned from this will be very helpful for us. One, we have Zoom meetings with our principals now that we can stay in better communication with our principals. They don't have to drive to Gallatin to see us. We can do it by Zoom and have it for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or however long they have questions, and everybody can stay on the same page and be much more productive. They can stay at their office or wherever they're at. So that helps. We can also, medically fragile children that have to be absent, we can deliver content to them through technology now that in the past we probably could have, but we just hadn't forced ourselves to do that, to take that step. So there are a lot of ways that the lessons we've learned through this time will be able to be refined and then used for good into the future.
Well, I will say that in our area, as well as several of the other areas in the county, Cumberland Electric Corporation is doing Cumberland Connect. So they are trying to get this internet to a lot of these areas, but it's a 5-year plan. I mean, that's not something you can just pop up and have fiber everywhere, but they are working. So hopefully that will help a lot of these things as well, and it'll have access for a lot of these students to be able to do that, because it is terrible. My daughter lives in a terrible area. She does not get internet. She uses a HughesNet. So if anybody uses that, you know how terrible that is. So trying to do anything video or working like that is difficult in many areas of our county. So hopefully things like that will help us as well with that. So well, looks like that most of these questions you have answered. People are, so financially, you're looking at the budget, and what was the increase in our total budget this year from last year? Do you know or about?
I think it was pretty, it was inconsistent in the amount because of the property tax that was generated from last year's tax rate. So even though those revenue dollars came to us and were allocated in teacher pay raises starting in January, but this is the first full fiscal year that they've been allocated within the budget. So it kind of is a little bit of a middle of the year deal because of the way we implemented the pay raise for teachers on January 1st. But I think it was about 15 or 16 million it's typically around 7. With the tax increase last year, the tax rate, it was a little bit more this year. But like I said earlier, the majority of that went out starting in January with pay increases for teachers, pay raise. And
so was it only the teachers? Did our administrative?
Yeah, administrators got it too. Everyone that was certified. Yeah,
that's
all
awesome.
Certified staff. So, and we had already we kind of tried over the past 7 years in 2 different cycles to get classified pay was dealt with a little differently, where certified may have received 1.5% cost of living adjustment. Every area of our classified employees were adjusted upward based on the market, because we were really skewed 5-6 years ago. We were really skewed out of the market. I mean, we had jobs that were still minimum wage, and this was even after the recovery was well in place. So we had to do some things to be good to our employees, but also from a retention issue and a recruiting issue. We just had a lot of jobs. At that point, we had 48 or so percent of our jobs made less than $10 an hour, and we couldn't do that anymore. It just wasn't the right thing to do. So we changed that. We've gone up every year, but last year we put in place for all starting pay in the school systems at least $10 an hour if you're a full-time employee, and that was a good thing. But it took us a number of years to get there.
Well, also, what about bus drivers? I'd say that's one of the hardest roles to fill. I mean, it's odd hours. You go twice a day, but it's in the morning and in the evening. And so how is that working for you on filling those positions?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because if anybody wants to be a bus driver, we have a job for you. Literally. We have raised that pay consistently, and it really is not a pay issue, because we give benefits to our medical benefits to our bus drivers. And
that's awesome.
They're the only bus drivers, they're the only part-time status employees that get benefits, medical benefits in the school district. And that's been happening for years. But that's a huge benefit, a recruiting issue for us. So long story short, since the recovery came into effect and the economy's been strong, we have really struggled, not unlike other neighboring counties. You can look at all the news reports where the odd hours and other factors create a real shortage and downward pressure in the labor market for us to recruit bus drivers. So even though we've raised starting pay to about $12, a little over $12 an hour, and they do get benefits on top of that, we still have, Sherry, I haven't checked in a week or so, but we finished, when we stopped school this year, I think we were about 40 bus drivers short of having a driver for every route. And so we hope that some folks come on board and will drive a bus for us. We've had a pretty good recruiting season this year, but it's hard. It's tough.
Well, and it's a lot of responsibility. So it's definitely understood how that you have to be a special person, just like you have to be a special person to be the teacher. You're dealing with kids, and as much as I love kids, I just don't think it's for me. So I do think that that people really fit these. That when you get somebody that's good and they fit in that, you want to give them their increases and keep them as much as you can, because it does take a special person.
And it's probably, Sherry, you're right, and it's probably from a labor standpoint, it is the probably without question the one place in our school system that we have difficulty continuing to have fully staffed. Every other place it's pretty much timing and supply. If the state only produces, every university in the state of Tennessee and Western Kentucky produce, 8 band directors, and there's 67 openings in Tennessee. Well, that's, no matter what you pay, they're going to go to work wherever they want to work.
Right.
So sometimes you fight that a little bit, but consistently, bus drivers is probably the place where we have the most difficulty.
Well, like I say, I do hats off to you guys for working through this pandemic, just like many of the businesses. But you're dealing with small children, lives that are impact the entire family. What you do is not something that you may not be feeding those the family with a paycheck, which you are with your employees, but those kids are just as important as anything else that's going on. And you guys, the people that are there at the admin office, as well as the teachers and principals, they really care about the students, and everything they've done has really wanted to better the students and try to keep them on task. So, oh, looks like he's frozen. Well, I do want to mention that if you comment for a chance to win your 2 meals from Senor Fajitas, I think somebody mentioned it was from Portland Pizza and Pub. I think that was incorrectly put on the beginning. So we will be doing that next week. Portland Pizza and Pub will be next week, but this week we have Senor Fajitas. And look, he's back. There you go.
I was talking about technology, and I had a technology issue.
Well, that is where we live.
Earlier today, Sherry, and so it ran out of power. I've had so many emails today, I've ran out of power already. It must be close to quitting.
It is close to quitting time, and I do appreciate you coming on and giving us this information, and we'll have you back when we get some of the answers to some of these questions. I know that again, you've got a lot of work still cut out for you. And as you say, things change every week. Is there anything that the community can do and that we can do for you guys?
Well, I think just be aware of how to be safe, and be aware of how to obviously do their part to not only with schools, but with everything else, to be, to be aware of what's going on around them and be safe. But, we get extremes, and this too, Sherry, and I'm sure businesses are going through this. You get folks that don't think we really do anything. And then I get emails from parents that want me to, have their child in a hazmat suit.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And at some point, most things that I have observed in life, you can find some middle ground and be okay. And I think we're not unlike the world. We're just trying to figure out where's that middle ground. What's that going to look like?
And I think that's what we all have to do, is just decipher for ourselves and our businesses, and your business is the school system. So you got a great team there that I know that you'll make some great decisions and put together a good plan. And as things change, hopefully we will all be able to be a little at ease, still clean a little bit better and take care of ourselves. So
thanks, Sherry. I always enjoy talking to you. Okay. Thank you for all the work you do in Portland and across the county.
Thank you. And we will have you back soon.
Sure.
See ya.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.